How quickly can you kind of turn a roster around when you have as many free agents as you guys do? Does that kind of help fast track the rebuilding type process?
I'm not into like quickly turning around. I'm into turning around the right way. So I mean, I think you can see this league every year. There's teams that rise fast and fall fast, and we're trying to rise and stay there.
John, speaking on the free agents, the handful of free agents on the roster right now, just what are your thoughts on Eric Stokes and how he played this year? And is this someone you could possibly see coming back to Las Vegas next season?
Yeah, we've had good dialogue with Eric about coming back. We're going to keep working this week. I thought he played well this year. He was healthy, which has been something in the past that he's kind of nipped in the butt a little bit. But he played 16 of the games this year, and super happy with him. He competed. He did what I knew he was capable of when I evaluate the player coming out, and I'd love to keep him around.
Obviously, you were at the national championship game. What were your impressions of just how Fernando played, but also his teammates around him and how they played?
Yeah, I thought it was just there was a lot of great players on that field, which you would expect in a game like that. And I enjoyed watching all of them kind of compete at that level and make the plays when a lot was expected of them in the biggest moments. I mean, that's what you're looking for. We're looking for guys that have kind of proven that in the biggest moments they don't blink, and it was awesome all the way around.
John, when you're building a roster, every coach is different. Arm lengths, heights, whatever, at what positions. How much is that the frustrating part year to year? Why you want stability so you're not changing that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think from just an organizational standpoint, what are we looking for globally on a player? Not just arm length or speed and all that, or vision. Like this guy's got to be this to run an X, or this kind of back, or this kind of left tackle. I think it helps the scouts speak the same language because we grade players the same year after year after year. The coaches, we all know what we're looking for, and there's just a lot less that goes into it. There's just check box, as opposed to trying to figure out what's the right perfect arm length or play style or intelligence.
When you were in Tampa with Tom, you would bring him volumes of analytical stuff every week, and you two really connect there. Clint is that kind of guy. When you were in the interview process, was that surprising, or did you already know that about him, that he's very analytical like you?
I wouldn't say I'm analytical. I just thorough and a lot of depth. I think you're always looking for an edge, and your ability to process and maintain and use a lot of information is huge at my job or a quarterback or a head coach. And so it was cool to see the depths that Clint would go, just like Tom would go to as a player, like what's required and how much you can process and retain and use. I mean, we could throw a book at a player or a coach if they can't. It's really about what they can use and kind of value in that process to help bring it to life.
John, I know there's no end-all be-all to all this, but how much has the playoffs, the college football playoffs, benefited or helped evaluation, especially when the quarterback, when you see them do it week after week against teams that are zeroing in on them, preparing for them, and on the biggest thing?
I think the biggest thing, Vinny, is just those are really good games. When we go to watch any player, right away we try to go watch them play against the best teams or the best players. If you're watching an edge rusher, like let's watch them against the best left tackle if we can find one. Well, in those games they're playing against a bunch of NFL players, and so there's still guys on those teams that aren't going to play in the NFL, but there's just more of it, and the stakes are high, and a lot's required of them to win those games, and so it's helpful that way. And then there's just more games to watch too. I mean, now there's 16 games for us to watch on Indiana and Miami, which is fun.
Fernando performed at a pretty high level in those games, in those big stages. What did you take away from that experience watching them up close?
They kept winning. I mean, kept winning, kept playing even when the expectations got high. I mean, he didn't blink, and just like a lot of those players on both those teams. I mean, it was that game that I got to go to in Miami was a wonderful football game. I was super privileged to be there to watch all those guys compete.
John, what dialogue or any dialogue you had with Geno Smith since the season has ended?
I have not talked to Geno since the season's ended. He's training. I know I've seen videos of him training, and I know he's feeling good. And we'll talk soon here.
I was wondering, how would you put into perspective the season he did have? I know he had issues with turning the ball over at the same time that the team had also struggled in terms of pass blocking. So how would you kind of categorize?
Yeah, it's never all on the quarterback. It feels like that sometimes. I know Geno felt like that too. Just the weight of the position, and it means a lot to him, and I respect him for that. And obviously you guys all know the quarterback gets more than his fair share of the blame and more than his fair share of the fame. I mean, it's just what goes with the position. But we didn't help Geno in a lot of places too. I got to do a lot better job in that space, and he struggled, but it wasn't for lack of work ethic and trying or care. I mean, he worked his tail off. I watched it every day.
When you were here a year ago, you had just taken this job for the first time. What have you learned maybe about yourself or about the whole process over this year?
Just keep working, just kind of hang in and, take the highs and the lows the same. And, a belief in myself that, I got to get the right people around me, which I think I did, especially with the draft process now with Brian Stark and Anthony Panch and Brandon Hunt that weren't here last year. But we got a great group of scouts, and I feel like we're in a much better place as an organization to knock the free agency and the draft out of the park.
Took a little while for Charles and Caleb to get on the field, but they did, and they played pretty well when they were on the field. Did they do enough to show you that they are viable potential to fight for starting jobs next year?
Yeah, I've always believed in them. That's why we took them when we took them, and it was good to see them get a chance to play. And we've got a lot of young pieces on that offensive line too. They've all got to play better, for sure. But I'm excited about their potential. I'm excited about their potential in this offensive style that we're going to play with. They're athletic. They care. They can run into space, and they've got to prove it though. It's a huge offseason for both of them. They've got to work their tails off. They've got to get stronger. They got to get a little bit bigger. But I'm excited about where they're at.
Rick Dennison, he's done it at a high level and for a long time. How much do you think he'll bring to the table in terms of that development?
He's got a great resume. He's just won his fourth Super Bowl. Everywhere they go, they run the football well, and they protect the quarterback too. So I'm excited about Rico. I got a chance to work with him for 1 year in Denver in 2015 when Coach Kubiak came there. So he's got a big job in front of him. We got to get that group playing to the level that they need to be for us to win more games.
Johnny, when you mentioned when it comes to turning a franchise around, you mentioned the Patriots and the Commanders in your press conference, how they had top 5 picks, lots of cap space, and were able to turn things around fairly quickly. Obviously, you're not in those front offices, but when you kind of observe how they moved within their organizations to turn things around, what are some similarities that you see that you may try to take and do here?
I don't know if I'm trying to take or do anything from those guys. I think that was just an example of they were able to flip it pretty quickly. And I'm not standing here predicting or anything like that. I just think that we've got a good system. We got to do the right things consistently, stack good decisions on top of each other, and we've got a great opportunity this year. So,
do you see any similarities within those?
Not really. I'm not really big into comparisons.
You mentioned some of the rookies and their development at the end of the year. Would you have liked to see them maybe earlier in the year get a little bit more experience?
Whether I wanted to or not, it's not the way it went. So I got to watch those guys practice every day. I know how they work, and that's probably more important for me. They're about the right stuff, and I love seeing them play at the end. They got a big opportunity for them to they got to get a lot better this offseason too.
In the past, Gary's talked about how you were one of the people that really helped him get acclimated to Denver, when he was there as the head coach. From that previous experience, did you have any relationship with Clint, kind of even back then, even when Gary was the head coach?
No, I didn't. Clint wasn't working in the building when I was there, and we interviewed Clint in 2023 in Tampa for the offensive coordinator job. That was the only time I'd ever met Clint. I actually didn't have his phone number when the whole process started, so I had Gary's and his brother, his youngest brother Klein. Klein I worked with he was a scouting assistant in Denver.
There are a lot of moving parts, I understand that, but when you look at JPJ kind of in this new scheme, do you expect him to stay at guard or center? What's your thought process?
We're going to be totally open-minded with the offensive line, probably outside of Colton. And DJ's he started 34 games at right tackle too, but we got to just be open-minded and figure it out together.
John, what was it like working with Gary during your time in Denver? And what similarities do you see between Clint and Gary, not just from a football perspective, but just as a person?
I was on the road a lot that year because I was a national scout, but I was around him enough. Just it's a great family. Gary's a wonderful teacher, very stoic, very even-keeled, but don't mistake that for the fiery competitor that burns inside of him. And I think Clint has some of those similarities too. I don't want to compare Clint to his dad. I don't think he would like me doing that. But I have so much respect for Gary. I actually think we've grown closer since I left and went there, and he's been a kind of a mentor for me. We've talked through different scenarios. He kind of helped me get ready for some GM interviews and just be confident in yourself. And he has a great way about him of teaching, developing, and holding you to a high standard, but knowing that he cares about you.
And just from your observing the league, just when you look at teams that bring in top overall picks at quarterback, just what are some things you could take away from maybe things that teams maybe have hurt a quarterback in terms of their ability? What kind of lessons have you learned in terms of bringing in young quarterbacks in and developing them and putting pieces around them to help them succeed at the highest level?
Yeah, I think you've got to support them in many different ways. I mean, to think that you're just going to take a young quarterback anywhere and just start him week one and it's going to go great is naive, and you're not doing that kid any favors at all. You know, I think probably more organizations failed those kids than those kids failed the organizations. And so whoever we got at the quarterback spot, it takes the whole building to support them because they have such a hard job. And we've got to be patient with young players in general. You know, I think we saw that with some of our rookies this year. I mean, offensive linemen, it's a hard job to come in and start as a rookie. So those guys had to earn the chance to go play football. And we've got to support those guys and build them up and develop them.
There's been a phrase that you've been saying a lot, build this the right way in terms of how you want to construct this roster. What is a non-negotiable for you when you think about building this the right way?
Somebody that doesn't love football. It's way too hard of a game with way too big of expectations. Those guys just don't do it for me. You know, and there's different examples of, you know, that in colleges, the guys that maybe don't love it to the level that we want, and you're guessing a little bit as to what they're going to do when they come to the NFL and come to Vegas. But, you know, more of a conviction in the right kind of person than worrying about, you know, I don't want to spend a lot of energy. I don't want our coaches have to spend a lot of energy trying to convince guys that they should be a good football player and they should meet their talent. I want those guys to have an expectation that internally first, that I'm going to get everything out of myself, and then the coaches are here to help me do that, and the whole organization is here to help me do that.
I know you kind of chuckled when you said it up there, but the quarterback being able to take a snap under center. I know Indiana runs about 97% shotgun. Is that something you've had on your mind evaluating Mendoza?
Every quarterback that's come out probably in the past 7 to 8 years, it feels like, you know, it's very much a shotgun game in college. And, you know, I mean, you go back, they huddle a little bit more now because of the coach-to-player communication, but that was a thing that we would talk about too. Like, some of the quarterbacks had never been in a huddle and, like, how to lead a huddle and communicate in a huddle. And then taking a snap from under, it seems very remedial, but, like, I grew up, everybody was under center all the time. You had to teach the center how to throw a shotgun snap between his legs. It's different now. So it's not anything that you can't work through. It's just you have to acknowledge that we're going to have to spend time with any of these young quarterbacks, teaching them the center quarterback exchange.
You mentioned Stokes. Are there any progress on Daniel Carlson, or any thought on him for next year?
We're talking to all of our guys' agents this week too. So, I mean, we'll have a better field coming out.